Tonight, at the start of the Democratic Party convention, delegates see and hear the passing of the torch.
I love the job, but I love my country more.
From the current U.S. President, Joe Biden.
Declare with one voice, as one people, we are moving forward.
To Kamala Harris, the woman who hopes to make history by succeeding him. In Jasper, Alberta, returning residents share wrenching stories of loss.
I will talk for all the Jasper people, the same pain I have, everybody else has.
And a Canadian is dead. Others are missing off the coast of Italy, victims of a ferocious hurricane over water.
These things, when they hit, you are second best. It doesn't matter whether you are the Titanic or you're this super yacht or your little dinghy.
From CBC News, this is The National with Chief Correspondent Adrian Arsenault.
Thanks for joining us. It's been a night of celebration in Chicago. Energized Democratic Party delegates embracing their moment in the national spotlight, hoping to carry August momentum to a presidential win in November. So it's day one of 4 of the Democratic National Convention. Later this week, Kamala Harris will be officially welcomed as the party's presidential nominee. She was there much of the night, even spoke briefly early on, but giving the keynote address, the current U.S. President, Joe Biden, a man who just about a month ago was preparing to receive the endorsement himself. So tonight, we have been tracking it all with both Katie Simpson and Paul Hunter inside Chicago's United Center. So Katie, let's begin with you and that speech by Joe Biden. What was his message to his party and his country tonight?
Joe Biden was quite emotional as he delivered his big goodbye speech, really. This will be a key moment in his political career, an opportunity to say thank you to the people who have supported him along the way, but also a moment to really pass that baton, pass the torch, pick your metaphor, to really usher in that next generation of political leadership, of course, with his ringing endorsement of Kamala Harris. When Joe Biden walked on that stage, he was introduced by his daughter, Ashley, and he hugged her and was wiping away tears. And as he walked up to that podium, he seemed quite emotional, and the crowd seemed to respond to it. It was sort of a slow build with this very long standing ovation that went close to about 4 minutes or so. But Joe Biden really explained a little bit of the reasoning why not only he decided to run for president in the first place, the horrific racist violence that the world saw in Charlottesville, Virginia, inspired him to get back into that race, and how the threat, that existential threat that he says that Donald Trump and his party, the Republican Party, pose at this moment, he sort of made the argument that that existential threat still exists. And that's why he took a moment to recognize that perhaps that helped him make his decision to not seek re-election. And he spoke a little bit about that tonight.
I love the job, but I love my country more. But she'll be a president our children can look up to. She'll be a president respected by world leaders because she already is. She'll be a president we can all be proud of. And she will be a historic president who puts her stamp on America's future.
America has never seen anything like this. A sitting president who could have sought re-election but decided instead to endorse his vice president as he tries to help Democrats, vowing to be the most active and aggressive volunteer to try to help get Kamala Harris and Tim Walz elected. When Joe Biden wrapped up his speech, Kamala Harris walked back out on that stage, gave him a hug, and you could, if you read her lips, she said, "I love you," and "thank you" at the end of that.
Oh, interesting. And before Biden took the stage, Katie, Kamala Harris did, briefly.
Yes, and this, of course, is her moment to try and sort of create a contrast between her and her competitor, Donald Trump. And that is something that Kamala Harris and the team wants to do throughout this convention. Have a listen.
With optimism, hope, and faith, so guided by our love of country, knowing we all have so much more in common than what separates us. Let us fight for the ideals we hold dear, and let us always remember, when we fight, we win. God bless you. God bless the United States of America.
Just a little preview of what we're expected to hear later this week when, of course, Kamala Harris will deliver her major speech to wrap the convention.
All right, Katie, thank you. Let's bring in Paul Hunter now. You're standing pretty close to Katie. I know you've been there all night as well, listening to all those speeches. What stood out to you, Paul?
Well, it wasn't a short speech, 50 minutes, but it was a speech of substance. And, you know, say what you will about Joe Biden, he's got a lot to boast about, and he ran down a litany of, in his view, the achievements that he has had during his time in office. He had a lot to say, and he said it. It was a powerful message. The hard fact is that in the eyes of so many, he's not the right messenger to do that, hence what's been playing out the past few weeks, and again, with Kamala Harris here tonight. Earlier today, I went down to the other venue, the other part of this convention downtown, to meet with delegates who were having meetings earlier today and talk to them about things. And all they wanted to talk about on this night for Joe Biden was Kamala Harris. Here's some of it.
It's exciting. It is exhilarating. People have a new surge of energy that they have now, because when she wins, we all win.
I haven't felt like this since I was a kid when Obama first ran in 2008. And obviously, like, the magic of, like, the energy is just so powerful.
What a turnaround it's been as Democrats gather to formally nominate Harris on Thursday as their candidate for the White House. Surging in the polls, including in some of those key battleground states, the next level vibe is tempered only by the reminder the election is still more than 2 months away and much can change. Key to Harris and running mate Tim Walz is to maintain the enthusiasm through to November to work to get the vote out.
We'll sleep when we're dead, when this is done, but not now. Not now.
Indeed, there are hurdles ahead. Thousands of demonstrators marched outside the convention area, reminding Harris they want action on the Israeli war in Gaza. Mostly peaceful. A small group at one point breached the security fence briefly. A much smaller crowd underlining there remains an independent candidate who could siphon away votes. RFK! And then there's Donald Trump, who, despite the remarkable popularity of Harris, still has remarkably resilient popularity among Republicans. His backers, also in Chicago, on their views of a potential Harris presidency.
Socialism is death, destruction, shortages, and that's exactly what will happen if Harris gets elected.
Underlining a fierce, likely ugly battle remains, even if this week in Chicago, few here seem worried.
Everybody loves her. I mean, there's so much enthusiasm about Kamala, so I believe there's going to be a landslide. It's going to be a landslide.
Paul, do you figure that's convention bubble enthusiasm or real hope for Democrats?
Yeah, tough to say. I mean, look at it this way, Adrian. Everything has kind of fallen into place for Kamala Harris. Everything has gone remarkably swiftly and smoothly. But there are still 2 months and a bit before the election, and a lot can change in that time. Look at what has changed just in the past month or so. So the question for Kamala Harris, with all this energy and positivity and enthusiasm, can she maintain it through to November 5th? We'll see.
All right. Thank you, Paul. Appreciate that. And a little later in the show, our U.S. politics panel will be breaking down night one of this Democratic convention and the keynote address by U.S. President Joe Biden. Now, hanging over the convention is the conflict in the Middle East. And today, the top diplomat for the U.S. says Israel's prime minister has agreed to a proposal for a hostage release and ceasefire in Gaza.
The next important step is for Hamas to say yes, and then in the coming days, for all of the expert negotiators to get together to work on clear understandings on implementing the agreement.
The U.S., Egypt, and Qatar have spent months trying to broker a deal in his 9th visit to the region since the Israel-Hamas war started. Antony Blinken says this proposal bridges the gaps on both sides. Italian officials say a Canadian man is dead and 6 other people are missing after a luxury yacht was hit by a violent storm, then sank off the coast of Sicily. Chris Brown now with a scramble to get survivors ashore.
All day, divers plunged into the waters off Palermo, Italy, where 50 meters below, the wreck of the super yacht Bayesian was thought to hold the bodies of those missing. This is the vessel lit up and at anchor last night, not long before unexpected hurricane-strength winds blew through the region. As security cameras captured the impact on shore, Dutch skipper Karsten Borner was on his boat near the Bayesian, fighting to keep his own vessel from tipping.
After the storm was over, we noticed that the ship behind us was gone. In the life raft was also a little baby and the wife of the owner.
The owner was British tech billionaire Mike Lynch, who's presumed dead, and Italian media reports suggest the 10 guests on board may have been family and co-workers. Port officials told CBC News the body of a Canadian-born man, the ship's cook, was recovered this morning. We saw a flare in the sky, said this fisherman. We were the first to attempt a rescue, but we found no one, only cushions and the remains of the boat.
Everything happened in a flash of a moment.
This former British Navy meteorologist says even the most sophisticated ship could not withstand a direct hit from a tornado or its sea equivalent, a waterspout.
These things, when they hit, you are second best. It doesn't matter whether you are the Titanic or you're this super yacht or you're a little dinghy. Essentially, if it hits and if it hits full on, you're not easily going to survive it.
Italian doctors say the survivors, which included a baby who was apparently held above the waves by her mother, are in good condition, though traumatized, that there's now likely little hope of finding those who are missing alive. Chris Brown, CBC News, London.
In Jasper, Alberta, residents are trying to come to terms with their new reality, their community devastated by wildfire. Ahead of them, the immense task of rebuilding. Madeline Cummings was in Jasper today and heard firsthand some devastating stories.
The same pain I have, everybody else has.
Gus and Joanna Vlahos lost 8 properties in Jasper. Among them, their home and L&W, the Greek restaurant they have owned since 1969.
L&W was home, home was home. And those 2 properties, it hurt us more.
CBC News visited the restaurant in 2022, the last time fire threatened the town. The restaurant fed locals, tourists, and even Prime Minister Pierre Elliott Trudeau, who stopped by for breakfast in the 1970s. Trees and plants filled the restaurant's interior.
Look, my trees hitting the ceiling. It's 40 years then. I started like this. I make new style, and all gone.
It's been nearly a month since wildfire destroyed about a third of the town. The financial losses pegged at $283 million. Most of Jasper National Park remains closed as crews clean up fire-damaged backcountry areas, trails, and roads. Today, RCMP removed checkpoints restricting access to the town, so it's easier for contractors to help residents sort through the remains and clean up.
We've had people ask us to try to locate everything from jewelry to sentimental items, stuffed animals, things, photo albums. Photo albums are a really big one.
Visitors, however, still aren't welcome.
We do need the space to get our residents and our businesses back on their feet, so we ask you for your kindness and respect in that. And if you do show up in town, you can expect to be intercepted by an RCMP officer.
Even at the age of 84, Vlahos knows he wants to rebuild, and he knows what Jasper will need for that to happen.
We like to say to all Canada, we need people.
You'd like people to come back?
Yeah.
For residents who have returned, this is their reality. Charged streets, piles of rubble. But Vlahos and others we spoke to are looking beyond today, hoping for help from all levels of government to rebuild quickly. Madeline Cummings, CBC News, Jasper.
Parts of the northeastern United States are dealing with some catastrophic flooding. Emergency officials in Connecticut say at least 2 people have died and many more had to be rescued from floodwaters. Some areas saw as much as 25 centimeters of rain. On Long Island, this apartment complex was inundated with water. Now, unrelated to that storm, Hurricane Ernesto continues to move north. The storm is creating powerful swells as it makes its way past the U.S. Northeast and Atlantic Canada. Environment Canada warns there's a risk of rip currents, some coastal flooding, and heavy rain in Nova Scotia and Newfoundland. The good news? Ernesto will weaken to a post-tropical storm by Tuesday. Well, the dramatic scenes after last week's water main burst in Montreal have put the spotlight on aging infrastructure across this country. Rafi Boudjikanian looks at what's being done, or at least proposed, and why cities say the federal government needs to do more.
Water levels are down, but questions are mounting over how this water main burst, flooding parts of Montreal last weekend. The city says the nearly 40-year-old pipe was due for an inspection in a few months and insists it's been on top of maintaining aging sewers.
You know, replacing pipes is not something we just decided to say, we'll see, knowing how unpopular it is to open the street and change pipes because, you know, it's not sexy. You don't win votes with that.
But some say the urgency to fix pipes and roads will drive new action.
Infrastructure is going to be sexy. You heard it here first.
The demand will only rise as more things break down across Canada, observers say, like flooding at Toronto's Union Station last month. Rowe says relatively short-term mandates for elected officials should not get in the way of work that needs to get done.
So this infrastructure that I'm standing in is decades old, and across the country it's increasingly decades old, much longer than any political cycle.
Ontario's municipalities say they've been asking for a sit-down with the province to talk about their growing financial needs.
It isn't working. Our members are really struggling with outdated fiscal arrangements.
But Ontario says it is paying its share.
We're going to get shovels on the ground and we're going to start moving on it.
There are requests to Ottawa, too. The Federation of Canadian Municipalities wants $2.6 billion more per year in federal funding. The housing minister, though, says he needs more accountability.
But I don't think Canadians would accept that the federal government would simply cut checks to municipalities with no idea of where that money is going to go.
The federal government did announce it was working on a national infrastructure assessment 3 years ago. Delayed, Minister Fraser said on Monday, by the pandemic. Rafi Boudjikanian, CBC News, Ottawa.
Television trailblazer Phil Donahue has died. The one-time king of daytime talk was a staple in living rooms for decades. Bel Puri now on his career and the controversial topics he tackled.
That is how she feels.
Phil Donahue was a pioneer, an innovative TV host with new ideas. In the 1960s, he rose to fame after being the first talk show host to interact with a studio audience. Earlier this year, U.S. President Joe Biden awarded him the Presidential Medal of Freedom.
And before social media and clickbait news, Phil Donahue broadcast the power of personal stories in living rooms all across America.
Over 29 years, nearly 7,000 episodes and 20 Emmys, Donahue tackled tough contemporary issues like AIDS.
First of all, you don't have to be gay to get this.
He spoke about everything from abortion to incest to politics, from rights for women to people of color and the LGBTQ+ community.
These young men want to get married.
But in 2003, when he opposed the U.S. invasion of Iraq, his TV show was canceled.
He was the trailblazer. He's the man who established the platform, and then others built on it.
From Irish Catholic roots in Cleveland, Donahue rose to transform television. Oprah Winfrey says there wouldn't have been an Oprah show without Phil Donahue being the first to prove that daytime talk and women watching should be taken seriously.
Arkansas Governor Bill Clinton.
A stop on Donahue's show became a must for politicians, activists, athletes, business leaders, and entertainers.
You are loving and generous, and you like women, and it's a pleasure. And whoever is the woman in your life is very lucky.
Well, thank you very much.
3 years after she appeared on his show, Phil Donahue married actress Marlo Thomas, the star of the popular sitcom That Girl. They were married for 44 years. A family statement says Donahue died with Thomas at his side after a long illness. He was 88. Belle Puri, CBC News, Vancouver.
Coming up, the controversial match point against Canada's Félix Auger-Aliassime. Why an umpire's call is sparking calls for change in professional tennis. We're back in 2. Well, the fallout continues in the tennis world after a faulty call ended a Canadian players' tournament last week. Félix Auger-Aliassime lost the match when he lost his argument with the umpire. Cam McIntosh shows us the video evidence that has sparked calls to up the game's use of technology.
Watch this serve. Canada's Félix Auger-Aliassime returns it to Britain's Jack Draper. It looks like Draper hits it back. At least, that's what the umpire saw. Video replay shows Draper shanking the ball. What should have been Auger-Aliassime's point ended up in a missed call.
Did you not see the ball bounce on the floor?
It bounced on the floor.
No. On the floor.
Like after he hit it?
He shanked it on the floor. What do you mean?
I didn't see that.
He shanked it on the floor.
I did not see that.
That has the tennis world talking about video replay. On X, world number 2 Novak Djokovic tweeting, "It's embarrassing. Tennis doesn't have video replay in these situations, or a way for umpires to reverse bad calls." On both the men's and women's pro tours, video technology is used to call when a ball is in or out. But when it comes to double hits and double bounces, only the U.S. Open allows replay, and that just began last year. But with the attention the Auger-Aliassime case is getting, the head of Tennis Canada says instant replay is inevitable.
I think tennis is embracing technology. We've seen that with line calling, with what we're seeing out there for use of officiating during the events. So this is just the next evolution of it.
Still, says this tennis writer, even technology has limitations.
You're always going to have the odd edge case that makes it look as if maybe there are grand issues with the system, when in reality, like, the accuracy is in the high 90s.
Auger-Aliassime just won an Olympic bronze medal in mixed doubles.
I'm serious. It's going to look ridiculous.
He kept his cool with little choice but to settle for this.
Listen, and go back and look at it after the match, and if I see I'm wrong, then I'll admit it to you. But for now, I can't go back and look at it. I understand. We all did. He's unable to have a look.
For now, he says he's focusing on his next tournament, the U.S. Open. Cameron McIntosh, CBC News, Winnipeg.
It's a momentous time for an Ontario First Nation as it celebrates a return to its ancestral land.
I love it here. It's quiet, it's peaceful, it's everything I wanted.
Coming up, what it means to those who've waited their whole lives for this moment. Stargazers are being treated to a show tonight. A rare super blue moon has been lighting up the night sky. You can see it here rising over Istanbul. A supermoon happens when the moon is closest to Earth, and a blue moon means it's the third of 4 full moons in a season. An Ontario First Nation is celebrating a historic moment. After fighting for more than 2 centuries to reclaim its land, the people of Caldwell First Nation are finally returning home. Jennifer LaGrassa met some of the first residents.
Can you get your baby?
This is Jarrell Vaughn's new home. She and her twin girls are among the first to move back onto Caldwell First Nation's traditional lands. Vaughn sees it as a way to finally reconnect with her culture.
I've missed out on a lot of things, like learning our language. I've missed out on learning traditions.
Though she didn't have the chance, her daughters will. For the First Nation, known as Zaaga Iga Nini Wog, Anishinaabe for people of the lakes, this is an enormous step forward. It's been fighting for this moment for more than 230 years. Colonization starting in the 1790s stripped Caldwell of its territory, which stretched from the mouth of the Detroit River to Long Point along the north shore of Lake Erie. The First Nations spent decades negotiating with the federal government. After settling a land claim in 2011, Caldwell bought an empty plot in southwestern Ontario. In 2020, it got reserve status and started building 28 homes.
It just feels good to have some place.
James Welch is Vaughn's neighbor. He's one of 60 people who will be living on the reserve by mid-September.
I love it here. It's quiet, it's peaceful, it's everything I wanted.
And this is it. This is what we've built.
Chief Mary Duckworth says the community wants to add more homes and a school.
I see, just real community values being demonstrated by working together, sharing with each other, taking care of each other.
With hopes that that can continue into the next generation.
They are 2 years old and they get to come into this world learning all of these traditions that I'm just learning now.
Learning that's taking place at the corner of Mishkiki Mikon and Jiwa Gaza, Anishinaabemowin for Medicine Trail, and being brought back home. Jennifer LaGrassa, CBC News, Caldwell First Nation.
Now, let's break down the news coming out of night one of the U.S. Democratic National Convention in Chicago.
I know and believe in an America where honesty, dignity, decency still matter. An America where everyone has a fair shot and hate has no safe harbor.
Just part of an impassioned speech by Joe Biden tonight, making his case for Kamala Harris. He closed the first day of the Democratic National Convention, highlighting his achievements as he passes the baton over to his vice president, saying, "I love my job, but I love my country more." So let's bring in our panel now. Tia Mitchell, Washington correspondent for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Tia is at the DNC in Chicago. Brian Stelter is a special correspondent for Vanity Fair. And presidential historian Tim Naftali is in Montreal. So Tim, if I may, I'd like to start with you. We saw this very fiery Joe Biden there. And for people who didn't see it, let's take a little listen.
I stand before you now on this August night to report that democracy has prevailed. Democracy has delivered. And now democracy must be preserved. You've heard me say it before. We're facing an inflection point. One of those rare moments in history when the decisions we make now will determine the fate of our nation and the world.
So Tim, talking about the need to defend American democracy there, what's your initial reaction to not just what he said there, but the whole experience of that speech?
Well, tonight really symbolizes the end of Joe Biden's political career. He will remain president for 5 months. He'll be a public figure for the rest of his life. But tonight he gave I gave my best speech to explain his career and his presidency, and he did it in a remarkably fiery, vibrant way. It was a summation of everything he stood for. In fact, for people who follow Biden closely, this was really a greatest hits compilation. What made it so poignant was the context. It's been a terrible month. It's actually been a terrible 2 months for him. And he rose to the occasion tonight to make it clear that this was not the ending he would have written for himself, but he accepts it. And more importantly, he understands that it's part of a process that could lead to the election of the first woman and woman of color as president of the United States. And he's embraced that possibility. So it was dramatic. It was far more fiery, far more energetic than a performance than we have seen from Joe Biden for well over a year. And it was the perfect, absolutely perfect way in which to pass the baton. The only thing that I find sad is that it was too late and frankly, a little too long. The American people should have been able to watch it earlier tonight, but I don't blame him for that. I blame the organizers of the night. But for Joe Biden, I couldn't imagine him providing a more powerful message. And I know from watching Kamala Harris in the clips and what we saw of her, that this was a very helpful speech, and she was very grateful for the speech. In fact, I could see, I don't usually lip read, but I could see that she said to him on stage after the speech, "I love you."
That's so interesting. At that point you just made about it being too long and too late, maybe this is a good question for Brian. I mean, we were talking about after midnight on the East Coast, when he was having this incredible moment. What on earth is the thinking behind that, Brian?
The Democratic organizers are blaming the crowds for cheering too loudly for too long. You know, there was too much energy in the arena. That's why the speeches ran long. That's probably a fib. You know, this was probably poor production on the part of the Democratic National Committee. I don't think it'll matter, however, by the end of the week. This was an important transition night for Biden to have his moment, to say goodbye. These clips will be shared online on the morning shows tomorrow. But really, this convention matters Wednesday and Thursday when Walz and Harris speak. And to the extent that this matters to Election Day, it's really going to be about Harris and her speech that will matter the most. You know, was this a snub of Biden? Was this an attempt to shove him into the corner? I don't think so. I think the reality is the Democrats have a lot of up-and-coming politicians that they want to show off on stage. And many of them were on stage earlier in the evening. So Biden ended up going later than expected. A little bit of an embarrassment for the Democratic Party. It's embarrassing tonight, but again, I don't think it'll matter a few days from now because the real important moment will actually be when Harris steps on stage.
So it's true. You know, Tia, this day, though, as we've been talking about, was really leading up to Joe Biden. It's like the opening act, and then you get, you know, the main event on stage. I think it might be a good idea to listen to how he talked about Donald Trump in particular.
Donald Trump calls America a failing nation. Think of the message he sends around the world when he talks about America being a failing nation. He says we're losing. He's the loser. He's dead wrong.
Yeah, you know, as a reporter, there's nothing somebody like me likes more than being there on the ground. And so I need you to be my interpreter for me here. Like, how did the crowd respond? What did that feel like? Like in a tactile sense, what was happening on the convention floor?
So I think there were kind of different phases of the speech. So as Brian said, at the beginning of the speech, the crowd was very exuberant. They got these long signs that said, "We love Joe." They you know, wouldn't let him start his speech for several minutes, and then they interrupted his speech with chants and things like that. But then there was a sentimental period where, you know, people, as President Biden talked about his family and kind of made the case about what he had accomplished and how he was passing the torch, where you could feel the crowd kind of reflecting on his presidency. And so the sentimental phase, I guess, was phase 2. And then as he got more fiery, you know, the crowd was definitely with him. They booed mentions of Donald Trump. You know, when he mentioned some of the things that Trump had done that he cast in a negative light, they reacted with a negative response. So they were with him throughout. I do agree the speech seemed to run a little long, and even with the late hour, that made it even more pronounced. But for the most part, the crowd remained with him and really energetic. And again, knowing that this is one of Biden's final major speeches, I think everyone in this arena kind of knew that they were witnessing a moment in history.
So, Brian, Nancy Pelosi was holding up a "We Love Joe" sign. You know, she, along with many other Democrats, are also the people who were front and center in nudging him off the ticket. So, you know, What an interesting moment that would be for him to see that.
And she was chanting, "We love Joe." Of course, she's a master politician. She believes she was doing what was best for her party, not for the president, but for her party, because she, like so many other Democrats, is terrified of a second Trump term. And that is what has really united this party, as Tia was just saying. That's what unites the crowd in Chicago and beyond. It was notable that Biden on stage said, "I'm not angry. I'm not angry." I don't think people necessarily believe that, but he did go out of his way to say that he is not upset about how this has gone down. And if you think about a few months from now, if he does, in fact, get behind Kamala Harris and help her become the first woman of color to be elected in the United States, all those bad feelings are going to disappear, right? All the anger, all the resentment, all that's going to vanish if, in fact, the Democrats beat Trump. So now that's really the focus. Is Harris using this week, are the Democrats using this week to lift her up and win over voters who might be on the fence about her? Because there are a lot of voters who don't know a lot about her yet. They've made up their minds about Biden. They think he's too old, but they don't know enough about Harris yet.
So to that end, Tim, why don't we listen to how he spoke about Kamala Harris?
Her story represents the best American story. And like many of our best presidents, she was also vice president. That's a joke. But she'll be a president our children can look up to. She'll be a president respected by world leaders because she already is. She'll be a president we can all be proud of. And she will be a historic president who puts her stamp on America's future.
Tim, as a historian, how do you think, I know it's early for historians, but how do you think the significance of this moment will be marked?
By the way, when I watched, as I was watching Joe Biden, I kept wondering, where was this Joe Biden anyway? That was a remarkable moment. It was quite funny, actually. Joe Biden's mandate in 2021 was to end the craziness and the chaos of the Trump years and to restore trust and to restore respect for American institutions and for the United States around the world. And if Donald Trump were to beat Joe Biden in 2024, a lot of the good work that Biden would have done in his term would disappear. And in a sense, his legacy would sort of dissolve, because the one thing he was elected to do in 2020 was to end the Trump madness. And if the outcome of his administration is a Trump reelection, then what is he doing? So the fact that now there is a new candidate who has a real chance of beating Trump, that victory will not only secure Biden's legacy for ending the Trump madness, but will also give him a new achievement, which is that he helped the first woman of color become the president of the United States.
Okay. All right, Tim, thank you. Stay right there, all of you. When we come back, we'll look ahead to what's to come in Chicago in the coming days. Okay, day one of the Democratic National Convention wrapped up. Now Democrats will be looking ahead as they continue to rally around Kamala Harris. What can we expect the rest of the week? That's next. All right, let's get to some closing thoughts from our panelists. So we don't have a lot of time. I will not rag the puck so that we can hear from all of you here. Tia, can we get ahead to Thursday and to Kamala Harris's big speech? What's your sense of what she needs to do to chart her own path out of Biden's shadow?
So I think, number one, she just has to introduce herself to all these voters who are still learning about her, create her own narrative, because we know that Donald Trump is spending a lot of money on ads painting Kamala Harris in a very negative light. But I also think she's going to try to lay out a policy agenda that's hopeful, that's about freedom, that says, you know, Democrats are about fun and inclusiveness and positivity, whereas Republicans are painting this dystopian view of America that's very dark and negative.
And Brian, you know, the hard work after the convention, in addition to what she has to do, who does she have to talk to the most? I mean, who are because I feel like we have to throw out what we knew about the election beforehand, the whole notion of double haters and whatnot. It's different, right? So who are the people she needs to focus on?
That's true. The double hater phenomenon is fading. There are fewer of those voters. There's a resurgence of energy on the Democratic side. But as we watch the convention this week, keep in mind, only 20, 30, 40 million Americans are going to watch these speeches live. The vast majority of voters are only going to see little clips later, if at all. So the average voter is not going to be moved by a speech in prime time. What they might be moved by are political ads, by Harris visiting their hometown, by surrogates coming out, by Beyonce endorsing her. Those sorts of touch points are going to matter more in the coming weeks among more casual voters who don't really care that much about politics or might not be that excited so far. This convention, as we watch over the next few days, it's for junkies, and there are lots of junkies, myself included, but let's think more broadly about that American electorate that's just now tuning in for the first time.
Well, you've got 4 politically addicted people right here. Tim, you know, with Kamala Harris being the first woman of color to win a major party's nomination, you know, it's interesting about how she doesn't talk about this, right? Other people talk about this for her, in a way. Is this how she meets the moment, by just saying, I'm just doing the job? I am the best person, I'm just doing the job. Doesn't talk about the identity that Hillary Clinton did, for example.
Well, there are some independent voters who might be put off by a campaign that simply focused on identity politics. One of the things that we ought to keep in mind is that this has been a vibe campaign by her, and it's been successful. It doesn't necessarily have to be weighed down by a lot of policy programs. She needs to keep up the vibe. It's very positive, it's very hopeful, and it's completely different from Trump. You don't even have to mention Trump's name, and you know that this is a different kind of America. So I think I foresee a lot more of that. And let's not forget, this election will be decided by 7 states. So as Brian mentioned, this campaign will be trying to find different slices of what it wants to say that will really resonate in those 7 states.
And I wonder if the Democrats are counting on the novelty of this moment not wearing off.
There's no doubt about it. Remember, the country was tired of those 2 men. That was part of the issue for both of them. The country isn't tired of Kamala Harris. That's a real advantage for her, and she's been using it very effectively thus far.
Tim Naftali, Brian Stelter, Tia Mitchell, you are troopers, all of you. Thank you very much, and thank you for being with us tonight. We will, of course, see you again later this week.
Good morning.
Next, Shania Twain honors a friend from Newfoundland.
She's no different today than she was 41 years ago.
Their reunion in our moment. Well, that is Shania Twain and her friend Gloria on stage together at a St. John's Music Festival. They met over 40 years ago when Gloria took her in and showed her around town. So this past weekend, Shania Twain paid tribute to her friend for her kindness, and tonight their reunion is our moment.
So Gloria invited me over. I stayed at her house. She treated me like one of the family.
I thought it was a great chance for us to reconnect, but I said, what's the chances it's going to happen? Because, you know, it's highly unlikely.
When I was 17, I was turning 18, and I was in Newfoundland. And I just had this very quick, sweet friendship along my travels, and her name was Gloria.
I just felt like I couldn't get to her fast enough, and just to give her that big hug. Ridiculous! And just to embrace and reconnect. I knew she made it because of the awards and everything she's gotten over the years, but it just kind of made it real when I did see her.
You were so kind to me.
I just can't say enough about her and how down to earth she is. To me, she's no different today than she was 41 years ago.
Ah, what a moment. That is lovely. And they really haven't seen each other in all those years. They've written a bit, but this was the first time they got to connect. And one memory Gloria had is when they first met 40 years ago, there was a bar fight underway, and they just kept talking all the way through it, as you do. For all of us here at The National, thank you for being with us. You can watch anywhere, anytime on the free CBC News app and subscribe to The National's YouTube channel. I'm Adrienne Arsenault. Take care.